So I'll be sharing screen later for my presentation. So I'll just do a quick introduction of myself. So I'm Wei Ling from Singapore, but I'll stay in Hong Kong for work. So before that, I was a law graduate and I was working in the startup world and a consultancy company. And then I did data science and machine learning, and now I'm going back into law. So today, my main crux of my talk is more on how do you find your goals and how do you work towards it? Because I think as young people, you kind of need to know what you're working for, what are you studying so hard for. So the bulk of my address would be, how do you manage this? What are the resources you need, and what are some of the dangers that you might have to take care when you're trying to strive towards your goals? So I'll just do a share screen now. Okay, can you guys see it? Do you guys see the screen? Okay, good. So yep, so how do you achieve your goals and what are the dangers that comes with it? Let's go. So I want everyone to know that you are young, but you have lots of resources that's available to you. It's either tangible or intangible. So when I say that it's tangible, it'll be things like money, materials, and intangible will be more of like your influence, your time, your energy, your beliefs. So what do you believe in? How do you translate this intangible stuff into tangible stuff? And how do you translate that tangible stuff into intangible? For instance, if you're working on a project, the project becomes part of your resources or your tools, and you can use it to influence other people. And you can use it to build up your reputation, to build out your skills. So I think right now, you gotta think, even though you might not have much money, you might not have more influence, you have to think about what is needed. So if you're, say you want to be a doctor, so what are things you need? You need to study, you need to be, I guess, a certain level of intellectual, and you need to be passionate about helping people, passionate about your crafts. So when you're working, you're studying right now, that's your short-term goal to get good results. But for the long-term goal, you need to practice as a, like maybe a junior doctor, work your way up to be a surgeon. So I think it's really important that you keep thinking about what do you need, what do you have, and how do you proceed to the next part of your goals. And so we've been talking a bit about goals setting, and I think goals are something that can change. You might want to be a doctor today, but you might find out that you don't pass certain exams, you don't have the aptitude. So how do you change it? Is what you wanted, is the goals that you set really necessary, good for you or the people around you? So I've listed 5 simple questions to ask yourself. So the first would be what you want to achieve. So that would be, what is your dream? What is your passion? What is on your bucket list? And next would be, who can help you to achieve that? So I think it could be people around you, or it would be people you want to know who can help you. And sometimes it can be a bit vague because you aren't sure what you want, or you don't know where can you find help. So that would lead us to the way, what is the micro steps and the macro steps. So I consider anything that is less than a year to be a micro step, and anything that's more than 1 year to be a macro step. So I'm putting it at 5 years because 10 years down the road, it's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen. So let's take that example about being a doctor. So you know that the micro step would be to get good results. And how do you get good results? So that would be to make good mind maps to help you study, or it would be to take out tuition lessons if you think that you're not catching up in schools, or it could be just asking your seniors or teachers. So that's your micro step. And the macro step would be like, you want to get into medical school, that is a more macro step. And perhaps communicating with people, because as a doctor, you need that EQ, you need that people skills. So that would be your macro step. And you need to put those two. You can't have them like, I just want to do a micro step or I just want to do a macro step. You need both of them to be able to reach your goals. Without that, it's really hard to actually stay on track. And lastly, what are the resources you need, which we have mentioned in the previous section of my talk. So having goals is really important, but I think what's more important, it would be being aware of what you need to do in order to reach that goal. So that includes changes that you need to make to your lifestyle. So you have to be prepared for a lot of things, like making a lifestyle change. You have to be prepared for criticisms, or even like character assassinations by people who might be jealous of you. And you need to be cautious about your words and actions, because that is going to affect your reputation and how people see you. And if you're not careful, that will also affect your chance in getting into a certain school, getting a certain job role. It might cost you your interviews. And also you need to know that your goals can change along the way, and you need to be able to recognize, like, this isn't working out, I'm gonna give up, I'm gonna go to something else where it's much better for me. And from there, you can decide who you want to network and who you want to reach out. But then again, if your network, don't just network with people who you think can only be advantage to you, but you must be more sincere and really reach out to people because you have an interest in them. You think they can help you, but at the same time, I think you got to know that you got to give a bit of something back to the people. It need not be like money or power, but it's more like being able to mutually help them when you can, or it would be just being like a friendship, a pure friendship. And also the last would be an increased workload and stress level, because as you're moving up in your career ladder or even the education level, there's going to be increased stress level, increased workload that will be proportionately more when it comes to really intensive like subject course or work or career, like investment banking, medicine, law. These are things that would have a higher level of expectations and also career risk as compared to other industry. Yeah. And next. So giving up. So I think sometimes it's hard to accept, but we have to give up on our goals when we realize that it might take us, it might be too hard to persist in it. So giving up doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that you can succeed in something else. So I think you have to recognize these 6 points before you give up. So if you don't have the resources, if it makes you too unhappy, you're too upset, too stressed, or that affects your health and also the relationship with people around you. And also if it costs you financially, physically, or mentally, and to the point that it's really toxic or unhealthy, that's when you need to know that you can't continue with this. And also if it endangers your safety and other people's too. So when you actually achieve your goals, you have to, so that's another milestone that you have reached. And with each milestone, you have to think about what is the next milestone you want to do. So do you want to expand your goals horizontally or vertically? So what I mean by vertically is, say you got into medical school, so you want to go to being a junior doctor, then a surgeon. So that's like vertically up. So horizontally would be industries that is not directly related. So you could say, I want to be a doctor, I am a doctor. So now perhaps you're interested in educating other people. So you could be like a professor in medicine. or you could do something that's completely different, like you want to do a health tech startup to help with people's health. So then you have to consider, are you ready, and do you want to move on to a different vertical? So that's a bit harder, because if you have never really expanded on that area, you would have to start all the way from scratch. And that would involves a lot of time in knowing like the subject matter or the industry. And also you could think whether you want to take a break. For some people who are workaholics like me, like I just want to keep like working on my pet projects. But sometimes it's good to breathe a little, to relax. I think the most important question of all is whether you're happy or contented with what you have. Because a lot of people have spent their lives working to where they are, and they realize that that really wasn't what they want. Like they want to be a doctor, and when they got there, they realized they have to be on call, they need to deal with a lot of sick people, they get depressed. So that's something you need to evaluate, because if you're burnt out now, it's really hard to recover or even rekindle that passion you have for your dreams in the first place. So I think pretty much that is the gist of my talk. And I think for goals, I think it's something that is very, very volatile to me. Like my goals was always changing. I was always pivoting according to what my interest was. Like I mentioned in my introduction that I was in law, then I went into startup, then I'm in law again. But for me, it was more like I was really interested. So I took some time out to figure out what was my interest. And I was doing like other stuff, like art, I was doing translation, I was doing photography as like the horizontal expansion of my goals. But at the end of the day, it was my interest. I was happy. So other people might criticize and be like, you know, you're so all over the place, you're so haphazard. But to me, I was like, I'm happy. I'm interested in what I was doing. I could like continue with it without feeling too stressed or too burnt out. So I think as young people, you have to constantly just keep questioning yourself, keep reflecting on every step that you do, whether this is really what you want. Do you see yourself doing it in the short term and the long term? So yeah, that's the whole of my talk. If you have any questions, you can write it to me, you could ask me.
So thanks, Wei Ling. So, can you tell us a bit more in terms of how you heard about Wisdom Accelerator, and what is your experience presenting here? That would be very useful to promote to other speakers as well.
Okay, yeah. So I know about the Wisdom Accelerator through yourself, Marcelo. So Marcelo actually wrote to me on LinkedIn, and he told me about this organization he has, and he was looking for speakers. So I had looked at it, and I thought it was really good, because I had my own startup doing education. It's called HS, and we do a lot of educational talks and also programs for young people. And I gave a previous talk. So what did I give? I gave on how do you find out about anything. So my talk was, I think my talk was about how do you reach a certain like success, and how do you go about achieving. It's quite similar to this talk, but it was just a bit different. And I think my experience with it is that it was really good, because during that talk, there was a small group of attendees, and we could really engage with them. And I really think that lots of people are quite willing to learn from the speakers, not just with us, but also with other, just in general, people who are older than them. And that's really heartening to see that. And I think it's definitely worth looking through the different listening and also reading through the like experience of the other speakers, because you're literally getting like 20-30 years of content into like a 20 minutes like short talk, and you could really learn about what are the mistakes that people made, how do you avoid that, and what are the little things that you could learn in order to apply to your life to ensure that you're reaching towards your goals. So that was really good.
And would you say that this is also beneficial for speakers, especially the ones from older generations, where they're learning how to communicate to the younger generations? Because the one thing that I realized in my career is that I never get to talk to really young people. I never had to, but it's a skill that is very powerful, and how to communicate without using complicated words and jargon and difficult concepts. I mean, is this something that you feel that you have to force yourself to understand? How can I get my message across to
Yep.
teenagers as young as 13 who are not necessarily native English speakers? Did you notice this?
Mm. So I find that the tool of storytelling is really powerful, because um, people want to connect with someone because of how they actually spoke of their experience, how they presented. And for the speakers, I think a lot of people don't realize that they have such a powerful tool with them, that they have a voice and they can translate that voice into something that's empowering, something that really uplifts the younger people. So I think I wasn't really a confident speaker before that, and obviously along the years I did like practice, and then I was invited to give talks. And even talks like this, I think I'm constantly like improving, trying to find out what works best in communicating my ideas, my story with other people. And also I think for speakers, they should use each platform as an opportunity to actually present the message they want to people around them, and also how they could communicate ideas and make it really easy for people to follow, and what would be the kind of messages that would stay in people's mind even after like the session is end, like, and that would be something, because I think an idea is really powerful when it's implanted into your head, and it just stays in your memory, and it affects how the attendees, how your listeners actually go about with their daily lives. For instance, maybe after this talk, someone would think, oh yeah, these are things I need to go with my goals. Maybe they'll think about, okay, I should make a lifestyle change, or maybe this is something that isn't for me. So I think it's like talking, speech, words are really powerful weapons of change, and also as driving agents for us.
Yeah, as a global shaper, do you have opportunities to do those talks quite often? Because the one thing that we're trying to do, and I believe that I shared this the last time, is that on Saturdays we're having sessions that are specific to cities, right? So right now we're having the Singapore session, and it's worth
Mm-hmm.
clarifying what that means. You know, and the standard is if you're saying that this is Singapore or Santa Barbara, whichever the city you're going to be in the future, it means that at least half of the speakers are from that place. So from Singapore, even if you're in Hong Kong at the moment, so they know the reality really well. And we promote the event more heavily in that specific region, so that at least half of the participants are also from there. And the whole idea is that by having the possibility connecting at that level, right? You know, we want to make sure it's still cosmopolitan. So if you're not from Singapore and you want to join the session, let's say, especially if you're from the Asian countries, it's you know, very relevant that you know, they're in the same time zone, they have similar cultural standards, they can join us all. But the key point here is that if you're in a situation where there's a speaker who's from Singapore, based in Singapore, no, Global Shaper Hub's a very good example of that, but it could be Forbes 30 under 30 when you're talking about the younger generations. It could be someone who is well known in Singapore, who went to retirement and wants to work with teenagers. The whole idea is that they will become then mentors to the participants, which is why I want at least 50% of both speakers and participants to be from the place, because they're physically located in the same city, and therefore is much easier for them to follow up a mentorship kind of relationship. And I think that it's really important to get teenagers today to have mentors who are global shapers, like between 20 and 30, because the generational gap is not so wide. I mean, you know how difficult it is to get into the educational system. You know the kind of pressures they're suffering. So it's much easier for a 25-year-old from Singapore to talk to a 15-year-old from Singapore and give real advice that is very actionable, is very pragmatic. And then you have the older generation, those who were 60 or 70, they had very long careers and they want to give back, or they just miss this connection with the younger generations. In fact, they want to learn from generation Z, you know, what's cool today? What are the things that you care about? And that's kind of a second type of mentorship. So you have this kind of you be a rising mentor of sorts, right? So you're rising in your career and you're doing so many different things. And maybe you never had the opportunity to be the mentor to anyone. Are you mentoring anyone today? As in personally, do you have a mentee?
So yeah, I would say that I have a dedicated group of mentee, but so me and one of the speakers later, Regine Chen, who are both from the Global Shapers, we do have a little lean-in group for young women who are students or young professionals, and we try to give them opportunities if we see like any job postings, and we do run lots of career webinars via the Global Shapers, and just inviting people from not just Singapore but from the US, from Belgium, from Kazakhstan to come together. And we also invite like speakers to do something like this so that we could have this global sharing. So you're not just getting this perspective of Singaporeans, but also people from other countries and other locations. So that is a little like mentorship programs that we have.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to be a one-to-one mentor to a specific person who has been to the Wei program? Is that something you consider? I mean, I'm not putting you on the spotlight here, no pressure, right? But is that something that you personally be interested in doing?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we can discuss that later, because the idea is obviously to make sure that everybody gets value from those interactions, right? So if you're starting now and you're in your 20s and you never had the opportunity to be the mentor to someone else, I mean, it is a very powerful skill, because all of a sudden, even though you have so much information in your head and you have your instincts to help you with making decisions, and you have a network that you can reach out to, when you have someone you're mentoring, you go like, oh, wow, no, what if I didn't have all of those things? What are the things that I have that they don't have that I can share, I can facilitate? And that's one of the ideas, right? This is what we're trying to achieve in terms of establishing longer term relationships, but also giving new skills to the 20 to 30-year olds. I mean, and even if you're 60 or 70 today and you have never done mentoring, especially if you've never mentored a teenager, you don't have a grandchild that you're helping out, or some cousin who's in that age, I just want to make sure that people realize, people who are invited to be speakers here realize that they have a chance. I mean, it's an